Maybe the test is passed. And I was like, I can't make your test very special.
Are we ready to get going? We ready to get going, everybody? Before it gets too late. We got a couple really cool talks tonight. Just want to make sure we get to them. But first, thanks for coming. It's a light night tonight. I know it was kind of late notice and on a completely different night than we normally do. Sometimes Friday night's harder to get out than a middle of the week. But moving forward, we are changing it up a little bit. If you saw my post, we're doing Wednesday nights for the next 3 months, I think. It was the only night that they had this room open. So put that on your calendar. Hopefully we can get this rolling. I know it looks a little bit different since we actually have light outside, which is a little weird compared to some of the last ones. But yeah, hopefully we can get this rolling, and this will be a good kickoff for it. So before we get started, as always, I want to thank our sponsors who allow us to get pizza and all the beers and everything. So CodePen is always a big sponsor. Thank you to Chris over here. If you don't have a pro account, go get a pro account. The more pro accounts we get, the more pizza he buys. So it's a good deal. And they're not here tonight, but the Lad Real Estate Group has written us a check this year. Is one of the few people to write us a kind of completely outside the tech scene to actually write us a check and help sponsor a lot of the drinks and stuff. So if you're looking to buy or sell your house, definitely check them out and make sure you let them know that you came from here so they write us a check next year. As always, if any of your companies or anything are looking to get into the local community, always looking for more sponsorships. That way we can do more things, hackathons, a conference someday, seminar, doing something different, having more swag, things like that we'd love to do on top of these monthly meetups.
What's the ballpark? Where does it start becoming interesting for BendJS? $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000.
I mean, it's all interesting. 1 million. Yeah, that's the right one.
There, sorry.
I mean, yeah, something realistic would be if you could throw $1,000, that would be awesome. It would help us out a lot. But even $100, $100 from a couple people would go a long ways. We'd love to be able to pool that and start figuring out what we can do with some extra money and, at least start building up that budget and taking ideas from you guys about what you'd like to see us do in the future if we can figure out some funding for it. So I know we got a lot of big ideas for what we'd love to do with it. And if you guys have any ideas for what you'd like to see us do besides just the monthly meetups, definitely let us know. All right. Yeah. Besides that, we can get kicked off. First up, we'll have Chris Bailey go. Interesting fact, we have the two people who love maps most in the world presenting tonight. One is actually presenting on maps. The other one, who already presented on maps once, is doing something completely different. We'll let you guys figure out what it is. But yeah, Chris is going to talk about, I believe, some of the tech behind NatureQuant and some of the cool problems you're solving and things like that. And while I'm up here, I'll shameless self-promotion, but I did just interview him for my podcast. If you guys are interested in the business side and Chris's background, it was also really good. And then in a week or so, I also interviewed Jason back there. So you'll be hearing his story too. So check it out. I love the feedback. What?
How do we find your podcast?
By searching for it.
What's the name?
It's called Small Market Startup. So it's about having, business in a small market like Bend and how to grow a business. But I actually interviewed Chris at one point too. So hearing some stories from people in our community, how they kind of became successful and grew businesses. If anyone's interested in that, I know I always was. But yeah, without further ado, Chris.
I present.
You plug that. we go to this.
I can try.
And then present.
Present.
I think it's a share screen.
Share screen. Okay. Entire. Yeah, I'll just do entire screen.
I think you have to click on that. Oh, there you go. And then I will add.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I've got some slides, but I will show some actual demo and stuff. But I figured I would go through just so you guys know who the heck I am and all that stuff. I'll go through these pretty quick so we can get to the supposedly more funner stuff. Yeah, so Chris Bailey, I've been a software developer forever, worked in startups, larger companies. Hotel Tonight's probably the one anybody would have heard of, or I worked for Adobe twice. And now I have a new startup called NatureQuant. I am a definite outdoor enthusiast, as a lot of people in Bend are, and that's one of the big reasons I'm here. NatureQuant is a company that a couple friends of mine from Eugene and I founded about 3 years ago. And our official tagline is delivering technology to assess and promote nature exposure. Basically, our mission is to get people outside because there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence that that is better for your health and well-being, both physical and mental health. So we have two products, one called NatureScore, which is more of a like B2B product. We sell it to municipalities and things, and I'll cover these a little bit more. And then NatureDose, which is our consumer mobile app. And that's what I'll be showing you a little bit of both from some of these things, but just also trying to cover kind of some mapping technology, because that seemed to be something that was really interesting in Slack. A lot of people were discussing that recently. So NatureScore is this 0 to 100 scoring system. It measures the amount of health beneficial nature that is around like an address or a lat long that you give us. And by health beneficial, what that means is it's not just like how many trees or how green it is, but it's also, we look at what are all the buildings that are around. We look at air quality. We look at water. We looked at, there's actually like 30 different elements that go into a machine learning model that we then correlate to essentially to longevity. That turns out to be this nice umbrella health marker. We looked at heart disease, cancer, asthma, a bunch of other stuff, but turns out longevity is a pretty good one to just cover all your bases and run your ML model against. And so we have this NatureScore system that we offer it anywhere in North America right now. We are working on adding the rest of the globe, but it's a lot of data. So we're kind of bringing countries and such online one at a time. As said, it's used by like city planners, investors, real estate companies. The Arbor Day Foundation uses our product pretty much to decide where they plant all their trees. We have a secondary index that maps environmental justice type markers onto this stuff as well. And so Arbor Day uses that to look at neighborhoods or places that they're considering planting and figure out where do we plant trees to improve the health and well-being of that community. So yeah, they're one of our bigger clients there. This is an example. And I'll be showing how we make these visualizations as part of this talk. But one of the biggest things we do, we can score any lat long or polygon, basically anywhere in North America. But what we also do is we go through and pre-score all the census blocks and census tracts. So this is census tracts, which are the largest. I don't know if you guys know about census things, but like a census tract's typically about 4,000 people. And so that's why they're all different sizes. Like in the dense downtown areas, they're going to be really small. And then as you get into open spaces and so on, the census tracts start getting really big. Like, I don't know, can you see my mouse on there? No. But this is one of the visualizations we do using our NatureScore system, and we'll do this a lot for cities. So we'll go through and we'll either just give them the census tract data that they can use to look at, or we will grid score a city where we're looking like every 50 meters and we'll build a heat map. And I'll show you guys how we do some of that later. So NatureDose is our other product. It's a mobile app. It's kind of like a Fitbit, but for tracking your time spent in nature. We also track the time you spend inside and outside. And it's a pretty darn challenging problem. Everybody thinks that their phone, like you see the little blue dot on Google Maps or whatever, and you think, oh, great, GPS is like this cool, super accurate thing. It's pretty bad, actually. If you're outside and you have really not a lot of buildings around, GPS is actually pretty great. But if you're inside or near buildings, it's super problematic. And we have learned this the hard way. It's like, we've done things where you can put your phone on a table and just watch your dot, and it will move around 50 meters or more, sometimes even further. So for us who are trying to decide, am I like here inside this building, or am I right out there on the grass outside? That bouncing around is really bad, really problematic. So we put together a lot of different data sources. We use not only GPS, but all the motion sensors on your phone and a bunch of other things to do the best we can to figure out if you are inside or outside. And there's a ton of academic research going on around this. People use things like the camera and the microphone to try to do stuff, but we're never going to get microphone and camera permissions for like this kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll just want to listen to you 24/7. Is that okay? So it's hard enough to get people to give you location permission. So anyway, the app tracks that. It's sort of like a Fitbit or similar thing where we're trying to promote you spending time in nature, and this lets you track that, set a goal. We show you some educational tips, stuff like that. We recently partnered with Outside, which you guys probably know for Outside Magazine and all their other media properties and so on. So hopefully they're going to be rewarding people for getting their nature dose, spending time. And we had a lot of other plans, some cool stuff around crypto and some things like that too. But as everybody knows, the crypto market is not fantastic right now. Here's a couple screenshots, just the welcome, just to give you guys a feel. You get this little dial thing that tells you, kind of how much time you've spent. We look at it on a weekly basis because that's kind of what most of the research focuses on, is you getting an X amount in a week versus worrying about, oh, did I get my, 37 minutes today? So it's more about get your time each week. All right. So quick bit about our tech. We are a totally serverless organization on AWS. Use a lot of the different serverless stuff, but not all of it, obviously. We are a massive Postgres user. Our databases are over 10 terabytes of data at the moment, and that's just for North America. We also use a lot of command line programs to just process data and do all the stuff that we do our scoring systems, like when people ask us for large scale scorings and that kind of stuff. You can go to our website and plug in an address and we'll give you your nature score for that. But we do a lot of larger scale processing too. Most of the back end is Go with a lot of SQL. Like I came into this and I know SQL for doing your typical web app stuff, but this was like a whole different deal to get into all the GIS stuff that Postgres can do. And pretty involved SQL queries, a lot of performance oriented stuff to figure out there, just because the databases are so big. So you're querying these like multi-terabyte databases and you need to do it pretty much like in under a second. It's so a lot of learning on that. Let's see, native mobile apps, and our website is mostly static, but it's Vue.js with a bit of dynamic stuff, mostly to do the scoring and a few other little bits, deployed with Amplify, which has been, I think, we've had a presentation or two on in the past. So I'm going to cover kind of two main things tonight. One is this challenge of the inside-outside detection. And there's a lot of details there that I can't talk about because this is basically like our IP. This is our secret sauce and that stuff. But I'll show you our debugging tool, which does a lot of mapping stuff, and I think will be the interesting piece. As I said, GPS not accurate. We use a lot of other stuff. And a big thing that's come up in Slack was like all this Mapbox.js stuff. And Mapbox is super cool. I can't even begin to scratch the surface of everything that toolkit can do, but I'll show you at least the bits of what we use. And they do some neat stuff in there. We'll get into that in the demo a little bit more. And yeah, we have done some interesting things in figuring out this inside-outside detection, like ski lifts. Most of the phones think you're in a car when you're on a ski lift. So we have a solution to that. Planes are really interesting because your phone will tell you that you're still, but you're going like 500 miles an hour. So there's all sorts of just really interesting stuff with the location data. Yes, I will say this just so everybody knows, since location data is so sensitive for many people, we only look at because I'm going to show you our debugging tool, which will show you like what a user's data looks like. We only do that for people we have permission from, yada, yada, yada. We only export aggregate data. We never export your actual like GPS coordinates or any of that stuff to our partner companies. Okay, so this debugger thing, it's like a visualization tool. I'm going to pull that up here in a second. It's basically an internal website we have. It's built with Mapbox and some JavaScript, a couple of custom APIs that we built to feed it. And then the cool features are for the Mapbox stuff. You can do some, I'll show this, but like when you're plotting annotations or points on a map, Mapbox not only lets you draw that stuff, just like Google Maps would, but they have other neat stuff where you can like color the point based on a function or based on extrapolations and interpolations that they support, which is pretty cool. You can give it a GeoJSON data source. Do people know what a GeoJSON is? Maybe I'll talk. Okay. So GeoJSON is a JSON that just describes things like points, lines, polygons, that kind of stuff to give you like a mapping ability. And that mapping coordinates can be lat long, but it could be some totally custom coordinate system as well. But for our purposes, it'll be lat long. All right, let's do a demo here. Let's see if it will. Do I have to stop sharing to do a different? All right, let's try this. Okay. Okay. And I'll make this bigger. Okay, let's pull up. How about yesterday? Okay, so this is our tool. This is me. So this is my data. So not revealing anything that would be worrisome. So what we found was that we would get people sending us support things saying, oh, it's not like reporting the right amount of inside or outside time or those kinds of things. And so we'd go look to try to figure out what was going on. So we built this tool to basically look at the data and really see, you know, what is going on here. So this is all Mapbox, and I'm going to just zoom in a little bit more here.
How's the gravel riding?
It's all right. It's a little wet right now. Yeah, this is a gravel ride. You got it. Yeah.
How does it track, or how does it handle like in a car? You kind of mentioned.
Yeah, so we consider a car to be inside. So this path you're seeing here was me doing a bike ride yesterday. The red dot, so red means you're inside. Green means you are in nature. And what we mean by nature is like you're in a park or you're in something that we can determine to be like a true nature space. Like this grass strip may or may not count depending on what data we have. But then there's this outside notion. So anything between yellow and green is outside, And what we do is we give you partial credit for your time outside. So if we see you're outside, but we don't think you're like in a park or something, we then use our nature score to figure out, well, how good of an outside nature area are you in? And then we give you partial credit based on that score. So
I'm just curious because I was just looking at my nature dose score for today. How can it tell that you're on the road, but you're not in a car?
yeah.
I was on the road and actually could tell that I was in a car. It didn't give me points for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the motion stuff off the phones is not bad for that. Like it will tell you in vehicle, on bicycle, running, on foot, still. So we use that.
The Geo API on the phone, the data stuff will actually give you that.
Yep.
It'll categorize
It gives you speed, direction. It gives you like an accuracy level, which is really important. So for example, when you get a GPS point, it will tell you, well, it's accurate plus or minus like 5 meters.
Does it actually classify it as like users in car?
Yep.
Users on bike?
Yep.
You don't have to do that yourself.
But it's like I said, ski lifts, they think you're in a car, right? There's a lot of cases where here's another one that's really tough. On iOS devices, if you put your phone in a bag on your bike, thinks you're in a car. Put it on your body, no problem.
It's not going.
It's not bouncing around as much. Oh no, even in like your back pocket, works totally fine.
Yeah, but aren't you doing things like once you're in motion, aren't you doing things like snap to route and doing like disambiguation with the actual like the use case? So like there's a number of ways that you can filter the use.
Yes.
Because the motion accelerator, the accelerometer, and any of the motion levers are just garbage when really if you take them by themselves. So you have to take the context.
Yeah, we pull in all that data and then we have a whole processing thing
Sure.
that runs through that and looks at all sorts of different stuff. And that's like,
Using like snap to route, like Mapbox or anything like NatureQuant.
we don't use Mapbox really in the back end. It's all basically our tech.
Okay.
But it's an ever evolving and constantly trying to be improved thing. And part of it is right now we're a pretty small team. We're hoping to do some more around this. There's a lot of really interesting stuff you can do, especially with context, but we're also trying to be very battery sensitive too. So that like prevents you from sampling at too high of a frequency, some things like that. But oh no, oh no, I mean, because we keep all this data, so it's more like once a minute.
So you're doing once a minute to the cloud or once a minute to the device?
Well, the device will do more. There's a lot of different parameters we do on the device for how often it's sampling.
Sure.
And then what it's actually sending back to the cloud depends on a variety of processing parameters.
You could offload most of the work to the device. So if you persisted, so like DriftWorks does a great job with persisting the local graph.
Yeah.
So you load the graph into the device, and then you can do a lot of that math. You get the sensor data, and then you can do the snap-to data because you can use things like Maps2Me or whatever. Like you can do all the snap-to locally, and so now you're inferring that the person's on fills, they're on bends versus they're going up cloud versus they're going down typically. So you can infer that they're moving at a rate of speed that fits within a profile that you can learn, that you can teach a model from. So like you can actually do quite a bit of that on device.
What if I'm bush bashing?
I'm sorry?
What if I'm bush bashing in a full sprint?
Yep.
Tell them, right?
And he would do it.
He would, yeah.
Off the shelf ML models today. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton you can do, and it's a super interesting problem, and we're constantly trying to improve it. But yeah, we've had pretty good luck so far. It's the other thing that we're not trying to do is we're not trying to be an activity tracker like a Garmin or a Strava type of thing, right? So we're trying to look at more of your bulk time spent, say, in a week of are you spending a couple hours outside or like whatever your goal is going to be versus like I spent 37.5 minutes doing this or that. So we have a little more leeway there. But yeah, I mean, if you're into this stuff, it's worth like exploring a lot of what the libraries will give you, but also knowing that they have their own problems on the device as well. Yeah. Yeah. So
I had a question about the way you do this, the outside score, actually. I don't know, I ran into rapid fire, so I might have missed it. So you've got these census tract work, you've got some sort of normalized data set that you're able to index against like your outside score. Do you take into consideration activity? So like you're outside, but
no.
so you've got penalties, so if you actually have high heart rate in an area that has high pollution.
Yeah.
So, like,
We don't do that right now, but we have been talking a lot about part of the thing is we are trying to take a very science-backed approach. So we actually, the other part of our business is we do tons of academic studies. So we're partnered with, in particular, Clemson and Harvard are our two biggest academic partners. And we're really trying to do this where we can basically have a real study that shows that this data and the correlation is legit, versus a lot of times people have ideas of, oh, well, if you're outside and you're running, like, shouldn't you get a higher score because you're like being active? But it's like, well, not necessarily though, because maybe you're not really paying attention to all of your surroundings. You're not, or you're breathing, if it's bad pollution, you're breathing, you shouldn't be out there. It's fire season, or so there's just so many variables. So we're starting pretty simple of like, you're either spending some time in nature. And also the other big thing is we really want to like, this is really not for athletes. We have tons of athletes that use it. They were a lot of the early adopters, but we're really trying to promote basically like couch potatoes and folks like that, like, hey, just go outside for like, even like half an hour a week. The current, it depends what stats you look at, but people will tell you anywhere from 93 to 97% of our time is spent inside these days. And that's pretty bad. So we're just trying to like motivate people, hey, go outside, spend a bit of time outside. There's a lot of research showing that like your cortisol levels come down and, you're more calm and you're smelling the phytonicides of mushrooms and like, all this like good stuff. So you can just sitting around in a park is super beneficial. You don't have to be running or skiing or whatever. So that's kind of the deal. Yeah.
What's the desired outcome for the business to be run? Like, so you've got this, it sounds like an awesome idea. So like, well, what's the desired outcome? So is it?
We like to say we would like to be the fourth ring on your Apple Watch.
I'm sorry?
We'd like to be the fourth ring on your Apple Watch.
Okay.
That's probably one of the most succinct ways to put for Nature Dose. Nature Score is probably just going to be a data thing and might be, we're talking to the White House about using Nature Score for a lot of their EJ stuff and things like that. But for Nature Dose, which was really the thing that started the business, Nature Score came about in us figuring out like how we were going to do a lot of this. So honestly, acquisition or it will do better if we can go into a large company that has a lot of resources to just make this way better. We're a tiny team, and so we're trying to do that right now. Yeah.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
can you reshare your screen?
Oh.
I think when your screen went to sleep,
What do I need to do? Reshare it?
Go to StreamYard. And
yeah, just the next tab over.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. So just a little bit more on this. So you can zoom in here. If I hover over a point, it gives me a variety of data on that point, for example. Yep, pretty much. So we also do things like we can look at like where are all the buildings. And this is another example of how accurate or not data is.
Where do you get that? Is that part of Mapbox?
No. So this is data we have. You can get some of this data if there's free. Microsoft has what they call their building footprints. It's a GitHub repo. That's not a bad source. OpenStreetMap has tons of stuff. OpenStreetMaps is, you basically have to use multiple data sources for a lot of this stuff because some have it, some don't. It's like new construction is the bane of our existence. That is the number one thing when we analyze people's problem. Probably the top thing that we run into at this point in our system is they live in a house that was built and we just, nobody knows about it yet.
Yeah.
So
I know that you said you're not a fitness tracker, so you don't, like, you have leeway there, but so do you not care that that shows you walking through someone's living room on your gravel bike?
right, no, we don't care. Because basically what we do is we look at a point and we say how much time transpired from the last point and what was that last point? Was it inside, outside, in nature? Just point to point. You just grabbed another 27 minutes of outside time or whatever it was. And we just tally that up. We do track some other stuff. We actually track park visits. So we know any parks you've gone to and how many times. We're looking at tracking some other things as well. And we'll see like what outside is interested in. Like they've talked about, well, maybe we'll reward you for going to, 5 different ski resorts. And we'll give, whoever's gone to the most ski resorts, we'll give them a jacket or whatever, right? Like stuff like that. So
Insurance companies, 'cause like it's the wellness.
yeah, insurance companies, hedge funds.
Insurance in general, like HR functions, like.
Yep.
Massive.
So corporate wellness is one of the big things we're working on. So basically, we have a partner called Business Outside. He does it right now with just executives where he takes them outside and basically shows them the benefit of that and how it can stimulate, creative thinking and all this kind of stuff. And he wants to scale that out to organizations. And some of his customers are these like IBM, right? Massive employee.
So like, when you look at Microsoft in Silicon Valley, they actually have, they have a budget specifically to
Yeah.
people that run 5Ks and 10Ks.
Yeah.
So like it's not so much about the creative thinking side, it's about the actual the decrease in the premium payment by the manufacturer.
Sure. And so we did it, so Clemson being one of our partners, Dr. Browning, who's there, he did this, one of the most key studies recently with Kaiser Permanente. And they basically showed that when you spent time outside, you lowered your annual health bills by like $400, which to some people doesn't sound like a lot, but across the spectrum of what it is, it's like pretty darn significant. So that's another thing we're trying to one of our hopes is when we made our app, we were like, this is just a demo. Our whole plan is to make an SDK that goes into like insurance apps or healthcare apps and things like that. Let them do it. Just like steps are now a commodity measurement, right? We would like NatureQuant to essentially be this standard measurement that's out there that, hey, the 4th ring on your Apple Watch, right? So that is the hope. So we are working on that. But so this.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
You're talking about your Postgres database and that's multiple terabytes. I love Postgres as an app backend, but I have found once it gets to really large sizes, like it just, hundreds of millions of rows or something like that, the performance just crashes. Are you able to do it just with indexing and partitioning and stuff like that, or do you have to use extensions?
We do it all on Aurora, which is just Postgres basically, but indexes are key. The geospatial indexes are really good. However, you do get up to certain sizes where we then start splitting it. We basically tile the data. So we have like hundreds of tables and then we have to know which tables do we have to query to put this all together, just to get the performance. You could probably get all the data in one table potentially, but like raster, like satellite imagery data, when it's, at like anywhere from 2 to 10 meter, 20 meter resolution, it's pretty huge. So
when you get into the tile set, like when you start to tile and do indexing against tiles, you're starting to infringe on strongest patterns. So they have several granted patents that are associated with how you tile data or index associated with that. So you probably want to check prior art on that, because that's an area that you could be exposed, to be honest. So like, depending on how you're tiling it and how you're storing it, there is prior granted art on that, so I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, I doubt it would. I mean, we're just cutting it up into separate tables, but
it's protected.
yeah, I'll take a look. That's interesting. Yeah. But yeah, the data can be really big, and you just have to, you start doing and then you play around with like different ways to do some of the GIS queries. So there's a lot of like, you can do intersections or distance within or overlaps, or there's a bunch of these different operators, and their performance can vary considerably. And then what you're mixing like, are you trying to find a point somewhere? Or are you trying to find a polygon? Or like, which things are you mixing and matching? That can make a big difference as well. Yeah, it's a big challenge. So we also do things like we're looking at when we expand to Europe, that's probably just going to be its own database. So work the same way as our other stuff, but it's just a separate database. So yeah, in fact, we started on serverless. So we do use the serverless Postgres or Postgres, and we used V1, which was Postgres 10. And then they recently said, well, in January, we're forcing everybody to move to Postgres 11. And as part of that, it moved the PostGIS extension up a version. And some of our queries they went from taking like, oh yeah, I mean, the query times went from, like tens of milliseconds to like a minute. Not all of them, it wasn't consistent. Like we got lucky, we actually deployed something. And then when real world data started hitting, we were like, oh, there's something going wrong here. And it was just these random, we still don't know why. Amazon, I mean, I've had a case open with like some of their most involved database specialists. Nobody can figure it out. So the eventual upshot was we moved to Postgres 14 and serverless V2, which had its own problems because we could no longer use the data API, which we were using before, which is this like HTTP API they have, but it lets you deal with not being in a VPC and all this other fun stuff that Amazon deals with. But they didn't build the data API for V2. So we had to switch back to SQL, and that was like kind of a deal. I mean, we had all the code was dual, so you could do SQL or data API with just a configuration flag, but pretty big change. And V2, you can't scale to 0. So
So that's why they forced you over.
yeah, I mean, we weren't letting it go to 0 anyway, because the spin up time was about 15 seconds, which is just too long. But the pricing model changed. It's actually technically it's sort of twice as expensive, but they have a finer grained unit of measure now. So because of that, your bills actually can be lower. It's kind of a weird, doesn't always make sense, but for us, it's stayed so far, seems pretty consistent. But and it's nice to now be on Postgres 14. We were kind of like complaining that they weren't upping their versions, but so at least we're on the latest and greatest. We'll see how long it takes them to keep doing updates.
I think there's like 2 more actually. I think we're on Postgres 16.
Oh, in the real world, where 14 is not that new, but it's a lot better than 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use auditory sensors at all, or is that?
No.
Okay.
We didn't want to ask for microphone permissions. Yeah. And most of the research on the stuff for auditory, so that there's a lot of location research on using both the mic and the camera. And the camera is not necessarily for images. A lot of times it's for light sensing. The problem is most of the time you have your phone in your pocket. Like this stuff is basically useless.
Well, but
So
still
it's okay, but if you read the studies, like you need to be like walking around like this. Like
I was thinking it should be able to like hear birds in the background.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Oh, you can do like barometer change. So when you actually walk in or out of buildings, the barometer changes a lot. So the other thing we run into is like what you can actually ask the phone for. So Android will give you a lot more. Like the other thing we want to use a lot is like GPS signal and Wi-Fi signal strengths and stuff like that. But iOS won't give you any of that. Android will, but.
I'm gonna remind you to share your screen.
Oh, thanks. Or I'll take more questions and then I'll do it just in case it's going to time out again.
So
Yeah.
can you tell me how far you are from Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it doesn't. Some of it helps. We're now we've engaged a researcher that's done some really interesting stuff with the accelerometer and gyroscope. He makes incredible claims that we're like, this is total BS, but like he claims he can tell you how old somebody is and how much they weigh from their gyro and accelerometer data. Yeah, and we're like, you're going to need to prove that to us, buddy. Like because the data sets that a lot of these researchers use, they're older and the way they're procured, like it's not necessarily super real world. So they can run their ML models against it and develop all this stuff. And it works great against these prefab data sets, which are real. They are data from real people, but they're just the way it translates into then doing it on that's the other thing is a lot of that stuff. They're sampling at like anywhere from 20 to 250 Hertz. And they're looking at like a waveform. So you can't do that in the background, which we need to be able to, like we tell you, put your phone away, go outside, do your thing. We don't need you to be running our app in the foreground. And so that's another big constraint that we run into. Again, iOS is a little more limiting there. We can't just like wake up whenever we want. You have to be there has to be some kind of event that triggers you. So a geofence or some kind of a movement or something or a push notification that'll wake up your app to take a reading. So that's kind of another challenge with it. Also, the OS will kill your app once in a while. What's that?
Can you change the geofence while you're awake?
Oh yeah, we change it every time we take a reading. So
question, because I set up my app recently. I did say allow all the time, not just while using the app, because I want to get the real score. But if I kill the app, is it still tracking everything?
No, it doesn't track it.
if you force quit the app, no.
No, just
No, as soon as you put it back on, you say it all the time, if it memory pressures, it kills it.
Generally speaking, if you like say you run the app and then you just go start using other apps, you're fine. The two things that will do it is if you force quit it, right? You do the switcher and you flick it away, right thing, or low battery mode. The OS just won't give any background processes time. Or what's the other one I'm thinking of? Yeah, those are kind of the biggest culprits. Or yeah, if there's memory pressure or other things, the OS can sometimes kill your app, but because it's a background thing that we have set to be triggered by various things, it works pretty well. We do see sometimes where sometimes there's a bigger gap than we would expect in people's reporting, like how frequency they're reporting. And we're playing with that a little bit, but we also don't want to get like abused for silent push notification stuff.
So I feel like I had force quit the app. It was killed, but it seemed to give me credit for today being outside.
That's good. Yeah.
I don't know how it worked, but
yeah, or you maybe you relaunched it. The background thing is really weird, and it's the behavior between the OSs is a little different too. So I'm not the mobile developer, so we actually have a team that does that. I do the backend stuff, but I don't do the mobile. So they could probably tell you the nuances of that, but
it seems like
there are some issues.
There are some nuances.
Yeah.
It's never
But like airplane mode is fine. GPS works just fine in airplane mode, so that's okay. And then we also, if you're not online, we store everything and wait till you're online to send it and all that. So really, it's the app getting killed or like low power mode where they just won't give you time.
Chris, you guys should look at SSID triangulation. So like this kid from Netscape that became Mozilla, he wrote a couple really interesting papers around Wi-Fi triangulation, which is the basis for like figuring out whether or not you're inside or outside.
Yeah.
At least on Wi-Fi triangulation, SSID triangulation. But you could posit that you could use that using Bluetooth SSID triangulation, because like you're not going to see a Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth node in the wild.
Yeah.
You're going to watch the RSSI go down as you
And that, so that like one of the things is you can do a pretty good job with all this of knowing with a reasonable likelihood that you're in or very near a building. The real challenge that we run into is, am I here or am I right there on the other side of this window? And that is, so that super fine accuracy and all the Wi-Fi and all that stuff, it doesn't matter because it's so close at those 2 points.
Does that matter though?
Yeah,
From a medical perspective, from an academic paper, medical perspective, does that matter? No, I know, but does it matter?
So,
From a health perspective.
Yeah.
Does it matter if you're inside the glass or outside the glass?
So-
From a health perspective?
yes and no. So here's like,
Actually matter.
so here's something interesting. They did a study in hospitals where they looked at recovery. And if you're in a room with no windows, I don't remember what the amount is, but versus a recovery room with a window that like can even be a fairly small window with an outside view, your recovery will be significantly better.
Yeah.
For us, the approach we're taking is to try, we bias towards you being inside in the sense that we look at like, okay, if like honestly with our app right now, if I was standing right out there on the concrete, we almost certainly put you inside. And the idea is that,
You can't even look at a building.
well, yeah, but the bigger idea is we want you to have intentional time in nature. Like, okay, you happen to be outside, but you're standing right next to a big building. Like you're really not, you're getting some benefit. It's technically better than inside, but where the real benefit is you're actually out under some trees or in a park or where you're getting the real benefits of this stuff. And this is like one of the hardest things for us to explain to people because people are like, I did this walk and like, I didn't, I only got 10 out of 30 minutes credit. It's like, that's because you walked in downtown New York City, like amongst a bunch of buildings. And that's, yeah, technically you were outside, but you really weren't getting much.
Yeah.
It's just like our nature score at 0 to 100. A 0 is basically like you're in a parking garage. And a 100 is you're in the middle of a mega forest. And people are like always pissed, like, oh, my house only gets a 20. It's like, yeah, you live in a city. Yeah, you live in an apartment building in the middle of a concrete jungle. Like, what do you think compared to the middle of a forest, right? We do some relative stuff so that we're working on that a little bit to try to like ease people and have it be a little bit better understanding of like, okay, if you live in a city, this is kind of like how you compare to the rest of the city. That's probably the biggest one we do. We try, it's hard. It is a constant struggle.
So that's another question. What is the hardest thing that you guys do with all this from a tech and whatever standpoint?
I mean, the inside outside stuff is to do it truly accurately is pretty damn hard. The nature score stuff is we feel we've done pretty well there. There are some cases that are really tricky. Deserts are pretty tough, just because most people think they're nature, which they are, right? If you're standing on a sand dune, technically, I think everyone in here would say I'm in nature, right? But there's no health benefit. There's zero proven health benefit. I shouldn't say zero. It's better again than being in a building, but compared to being in a significantly green or water environment, it's pretty bad. So
The mortality rate of people in the desert.
yeah,
Pretty high.
it is.
Wait, so how does like being in is there a difference
Yeah.
between being in a forest here and being in a forest on the west side?
Probably, yeah. It's a denser green there.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
it's
yeah.
definitely different physically in reality, but like in the app, is it different?
No, not well. For nature score, yes. For nature dose, no.
Does nature score or nature dose take into consideration elevation change or humidity or?
Not really. No.
It really should.
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
there a recommendation aspect to this? Like if I do my daily thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and I get a 30, can you tell me like what I need to do differently?
oh, for like a nature score, or are you talking about nature getting your nature dose?
It's like the nature score thing is one of those numbers that sounds really abstract. Like,
Yeah.
like, what the hell am I doing?
The short answer is you shouldn't pay any attention to the nature score. Like, it's really not a consumer product. I mean, you can kind of look at it, but like,
Not a consumer app.
but the app, so that's where you want to look, right? So
I have not used the app. What is it?
The nature dose.
Yeah.
How much time it's
Right, so that's-
crediting you for spending in a nature.
So that's
environment.
experiential, like that can sort of tell me up to this point, like you've been in these places and therefore you have this score. But one of the problems with machine learning models is like, how do you correlate that back to like changing the inputs in a way that results in a beneficial outcome?
That is an interesting proposition, because if you're saying like, I'm only getting 10 of 30 minutes because I walked, but it was in a densely populated area, so even though
Yeah.
it says it's based on time, like, I think to Robert's point is, could you do something where it's like, hey, if you were to take this 30-minute walk instead of down this street,
Oh yeah,
in this other location, you would have gotten the whole 30
Yes.
minutes and actually provided that feedback.
we are working on
You guys
that.
are like
Yeah.
really roadmapping.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the app's gonna tell me like, hey,
Well-
your city catches on fire every summer. So you might want to consider-
So, yeah, the air quality and the fire stuff is a big one on our radar, and it's tough because it can radically change also that underlying data. But we have to wait for that data to catch up a little bit. We're looking at a lot of the AQI stuff. That one's tough because there's a lot of sensors in cities, but all of our stuff operates on a full national level.
Weird, it has
So-
quite good satellite-based AQI stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of this, right? But
Right, yeah.
but then to look at like one of the things we want to do with Nature Dose when we're looking at how you're moving around is to look at that kind of stuff. Like, oh, okay, they're moving around. Is it day or night? What's the air quality? What's the smoke levels? Like, is it raining or snowing or all these things? And like one of our founders is the head of the human performance lab at U of O. And he spends a lot of time looking at like temperature and those kinds of things and how that affects people. So there's all this stuff that we can put into it, but we're super early days, right? We're trying to basically make this, establish it as a measure, and then just make it better and better.
Like you could start to structure it now as a clinical study.
Oh, we're in many clinical studies. Yeah.
But if you were to do that, then you could have a foundation to support the claims, like if you're outside in such and such state, understanding that like you're in Bend, OHA says that if you're outside or you're
Yeah.
predisposed by being in the high desert to having skin cancer. But if you're outside for this many minutes, one, you get the vitamin D dose, but two, you don't get the rats that can also be like burn your skin off.
Right.
But that's like you need to, because the validation there is what you're gonna be able to carry on.
Yeah.
Brings up, I'm curious where you get the mortality data.
So we currently use mostly US based data for that. So there's, I don't
Just
have the
census data.
census, but other stuff. We are also, because we're working with Harvard, we're trying to use a lot of the nurses' health data, but that's PII, and a whole challenge thing there. We're also doing, with some of the other studies that we're doing, we will do the data, they keep the health stuff, and then we, in partnership, work with them so that they don't have to give us all their study participants' addresses and stuff like that. That's like the hardest thing to deal with. So
Eventually, are you trying to use, you have the crap, I just forgot the two names.
Nature Score and Nature Dose.
Nature
Yeah.
Score.
I know we have, and the company's NatureQuant. We know the naming is super confusing. So
Nature
yeah,
Score is powering Nature Dose. And
Yeah.
telling you like, okay, this is a good place.
yeah.
But Nature Dose will power Nature Score eventually.
That's our hope. Part of what we want to do with Nature Dose is all these studies and this learning to understand, like, does the species of trees you're walking next to matter? Right. So like there's cool LiDAR data out there that will tell you like all this stuff. And it's only in some cities so far, but it's freaking cool, right? It's like, oh, it's this size tree. Its canopy is like this, it's this species. It does, and also you have to start to look at seasonality, right? So like, is that tree actually green and in there in the winter or not?
But even there's
yeah.
a base problem
mortality data just tells you like where this person died. It doesn't
Yeah.
tell you like, okay, maybe they spent this many years in this environment.
There is longitudinal data for like the Nurses Health Study is an amazing one that's been going on for like 30 plus years, I think, with several 100,000 nurses. So that data set is pretty, and it's all over the country. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean,
We were able to put that all together.
yeah, I mean, and it's also, it's early days for all this stuff, right? So we're constantly like looking for data sets and trying new things, and then we'll run other models or other data sets through the model. But sometimes they come out and like their weight is like basically zero, right? It's like, okay, like tree canopy is a good one. Tree canopy is not actually that good. Vegetation index, much better, for example. So, yeah. Well, I would roughly 10. Bunch of engineers, a couple other folks. So, yeah.
How can we help?
Use the app. Give us feedback. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We are probably one of the biggest things is we're looking to like gamify it to try to help motivate people. Like some people are just super numbers nerd. Like I have a bunch of friends who are like athletes and they're just like, I just want my high score, right? Like I just want to beat the next guy. Yeah, but yeah, the like streaks, we want to do all that stuff, but like, no. Yeah, we have a gamification idea, and that's hopefully where we'll go. So yeah. So yeah, high desert's not that bad. It's better than desert. Like Phoenix is not a good place. This is a better desert to be in. So I don't. How long have we been going? Do you guys?
Just keep going. Dan,
Do you want me to? Okay.
Dan graciously told me that he's gonna go next time.
I mean, and I guess it depends what else you guys
Hey,
want
I
to
think
see.
It's nice. I think everyone's enjoyed this and had lots of questions. So.
All right. Well, I'll do you guys want me? I could move on to. Do people want to see the Kepler stuff? Kepler's kind of cool.
Oh, you did that.
Did I?
Curious about the business side of things.
Yeah. Well, we would appreciate any help. Like we've looked at doing marketing. We're 100% bootstrapped by the 3 co-founders. Been going
So it's all, you're all self-funded.
self-funded for the last 3 years.
Hey, I'll just ask because we had so few people. Does anyone want an extra drink token? Sure. Raise your hand.
Might as well.
Colin?
Have you guys looked into like making a dedicated device or like a wearable or something?
Well, so we have a study going with Aura rings, and we would very much like to have Aura just put us in as another, measure.
Does a luminosity sensor fall under camera or is it like a separate sensor?
A which one?
Like a luminosity, or maybe they just create a luminosity based off of cameras. 'Cause
I
I've
don't
seen
know.
that on
Is it-
Android where it says there's
Should I
like a
read?
brightness sensor.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
Maybe just unplug it. It's working on like the stream's working. It's just not showing up there. There it goes.
Do we get it?
I'm guessing it just did a little like.
And then do I
stream
need to just go
flash.
back here and?
Maybe they.
No, this is working.
Okay. It's just not there.
For some reason, it's just not. Hold on.
Maybe it's on that cooldown cycle.
Try to get up on the screen. It's really nice that they have the system here, but it also sucks.
Every time the music's too loud, you quiet, and then somebody has to come.
I know, and it's impossible to get it figured out. Like,
Try this one.
that's interesting. So that should mean, I bet you if you looked at your,
Should I open my displays?
Well, that's like,
Yeah,
if you
and it shows on there on the display,
it's
it's
like
like-
outdoor temperature pretty decently, like, you could just already be like, oh,
It's just-
most of the time you're right inside, we don't see a temperature flux, but if it like drops before it freezes really quickly, you could be like, oh, you just.
My location is.
Here.
4.7.
I know, my house is 49.
That's right now, right? So that's here
Right.
that you're getting at. Yeah.
My house is 49.5.
All right.
Almost 50.
Well,
So if it was like too hot outside.
let me just try sharing again, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that. I don't think it has anything to do with the StreamYard. I think it has to do with this. Did your
Should we turn it off and turn it back on?
did your display say
It sees it. Yeah, it definitely sees it.
Here, let's try that.
It sees this thing, AT whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it shows. It's
For some reason, it's not like actually displaying. It's not actually showing the video.
is it on mirror?
I didn't know it was just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it.
Yeah, that's not going off. Yeah, so it's mirroring.
Yeah,
Is that
mirror.
just
Mirror.
all of a sudden not working. What happens if you turn up your brightness?
Well, it's like if you could manufacture like.
Oh yeah, maybe stop mirroring. Just try to like extend.
It seems like you wouldn't have to have a screen or anything, but like if you could have a good like monitor.
Can you
And
scroll
then I
off
can scroll that. Yeah.
and just like click?
Here, let me
or
just
something?
move a window over there.
Or just be like outside.
Maybe not that window because you need that window.
Oh, I know. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't move it all the way. I'm just trying to figure out like where is it. Usually they have that arrange.
Oh,
Okay, so it
it's to the
thinks
right.
it's to the right.
But it would solve the problem like.
This
Let's just try mirroring again.
this AV. Oh yeah, there you go.
Feature for you versus me.
Yeah, just mirror for built-in display.
Personal perceptions of it.
Do you have more to show or just talk?
I mean, I could do the whole Kepler thing, but without showing that, yeah, I don't know. I can do Kepler the next time. Yeah, here, try. Let's try the other USB port.
Oh,
Try this one.
it might just be this thing,
I
guy.
wonder if the.
I might.
I wonder if the.
Hold on.
Just right. Just,
Home memory.
It's on.
I know it's on. It's actually showing. It's literally just not showing the actual thing.
Input select. Maybe I hit the wrong input or something. Do you know if that changes the input?
No idea.
Should we try it?
Yeah, hit it. No, it's red.
It's crazy. There's a thing about like having a window in the hospital versus not.
I don't know. We might just have to.
I can do
it.
Kepler another time. Maybe it's like
We
kind
might
of a
just- we
different
might
thing.
just
That's
have to
totally
do it.
fine. Yeah,
Once we figure out the.
that's so weird. How true. Oh, that thing is off.
I just turned it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Turn it back on. Well, this is my last shot.
All right.
Turn it off, then turn it back on.
Maybe it just went to sleep.
Yeah.
If not, we'll do it later. Honestly, obviously you were hit. We had a shit ton of questions.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting all that. But that's fine. I'm cool with that. That's
I mean, I
all
think it
good.
means you're on something.
Yeah.
People are
That's
interested.
my hope. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely interested. I downloaded it and I've been checking it all the time. Like, get my split up. Come on. I got my bike ride today, so that's
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
that actually put me over for my week.
Nice.
This is what I needed. So
Yeah. I know it's funny because I have a goal that I set based on kind of like I was
Well, your
really
goal
killing
is-
it in the summer,
your goal is balls.
and then
You're 420 minutes.
yeah,
or
and then
something.
in the winter, like I'm almost never getting that.
Well,
All right, next time.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, hey, real quick, hang out for as long as you want. I don't know if there's any pizza, but grab another drink. For
Sorry.
some reason, the AV system, software, AV are not quite the same thing. I'm not hardware.
It gave me my time
I don't
limit.
know why